You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, Slick Talkers, we are back, and this episode is a true treat. And I want to start off by teaching all of you, my listeners, a lesson in being proactive and just taking action, no matter how much you think it may not be the right time, because we get in our own way sometimes. I've been wanting to get Isaac French on the podcast for a very, very long time, and I was so hesitant to reach out and be like, oh, you want to be on my show? Just because, he's a popular guy. He's always on these other podcasts. He's going around on basically a podcast tour. And I figured, okay, it's just another podcast. I would hate to interrupt into his day to day. And then I get a DM from Isaac saying, hey, let's chat. Let's do a pod. And I was like, dude, I've been wanting to do a pod forever. So get out of your own way, Slick Talkers. All right. Don't let yourself get in the way of executing on something fun and exciting. So Isaac, thank you so much for DMing me and kicking me behind the butt and putting a fire under my butt to actually get you on the show. And two, welcome to the podcast.
Will, thanks for having me. I've been a fan for a while, following along in the shadows, so it's a pleasure to be here.
Following along in the shadows, but you seem to have a quite the spotlight. And I told you this morning, obviously I've been listening to a lot of podcasts that you've been on to be fresh and prepared for this episode. And you and I got to chat prior to actually recording. But you've had quite the run, and your story is very unique. So I know that a lot of industry people know you, but let's say there's a couple new Slick Talk listeners that maybe haven't heard Isaac French and Live Oak Lake. Can you give us a high overall recap of just kind of the history of what you've done in hospitality to obviously lead into the rest of the conversation today? All right, Slick Talkers, so sorry to interrupt, but obviously you know what to expect when you listen to an episode, and that's for us to give an amazing shout out to our amazing partners. And one of those amazing partners is Minute. We've been with Minute for a while, and we use them in all of our vacation homes and recreation vacation rentals. So every home gets a noise sensor. And the reason why we do this is because one, it's 100% privacy safe. And with the whole Airbnb banning indoor cameras, which again, if any of you used them, shame on you, don't have indoor cameras, get Minute, replace that, have it be privacy safe, where it only measures decibel levels. And that's super important because you're not recording conversations and eavesdropping on your guests. You're just measuring noise. And that's going to be so helpful for you and your team, because then you're going to be able to decide when parties are happening based on decimal levels and alerts from Minute. On top of occupancy, you could tell how many cell phones are connected to the Wi-Fi, all these other things that are happening inside the home that really prove a case for parties. And maybe even when your home's unoccupied, when things go wrong, someone breaks in, something happens, right? You'll be able to have the proof and the knowledge of understanding what's happening inside of your property without actually being creepy and weird by spying on your guests and your team. So get with Minutes, grab the link in the show notes, make sure you grab the special offer. And if you have more than 10 homes, guess what? Reach out to them. They're going to take great care of you. Let them know that Will from Slick Talk sent you, and they're going to have you all set up. So thank you, Minute, for sponsoring this episode and for this show. We love your partnership. And of course, like always, we're back to the episode.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a big family, 9 siblings, very industrious, was starting businesses from the time I was
Dang.
6 years old and on. And I like to tell people I started everything from a homebrew soda company that unfortunately ended because we had a lot of explosions, but it was funny nonetheless. Everything from that to a typewriter repair shop and pretty much everything in between. So always loved new ventures, and I've always been a people person at heart. So though I never really was in hospitality until Live Oak Lake, it was sort of in my blood. We always were hosting folks growing up as well. So but the majority of my work experience, starting when I was in high school, working summers, was for my dad, who is a general contractor. So I got well versed in all the trades and eventually ran projects for him and worked in construction for 6 or 7 years, which has served me very well. I also learned accounting and bookkeeping and tax prep around the same time, because I wanted to have kind of that numbers proficiency foundation if I was going to start and run businesses. And
Mhm.
additionally, I've always been very creative and artistic. So when I was younger, I wanted to be an architect, but didn't really want to commit the time to go through the training, because again, I had a lot of other interests as well. But I did some study, and I've always loved painting and drawing. And in 2020, I got married. At the time, had quit the construction thing, but was doing some accounting and was really looking for, is there a way I could bring together all of these bits and pieces of work and life experience and put them into a passion project that can combine a lot of different roles? And had this idea to create this, for lack of a better term that I didn't have at the time, a village of
Mhm.
like really cool, unique cabins. And so this idea was coming together, and I was looking for land, and I just couldn't find the right place. And then one morning I was on Zillow, and literally like 4 hours during the night, a property had been listed that was right down the road from me, closer than most places I'd been looking at. And I'd driven by this place like probably 100 times, but never thought anything of it because it was just treed, and I didn't think there was anything behind the trees.
Mhm.
And but when I saw a drone photo, I saw like this little cow pond in the middle, and I saw these huge oak trees, and I was like, wow, that's worth looking at. So within 30 minutes was on site with the listing agent, checked the place out, and I'm pretty sure I had goosebumps the first time I walked on. It was like this magical feeling of, this is the spot. And though I don't have a clear picture yet for exactly what the final result is going to look like, I can feel that the land is going to help tell me what to build here. That sounds funny, but it really was like just this amazing feeling and confirmation. So got the property under contract that day, started making a ton of phone calls to figure out how I was going to finance it, because I had about $20,000 at that time saved up, and the property was $138,000. And my dad and brothers said, well, at least get under contract. We'll figure out a way to buy it. So
Mhm.
we had a 30-day due diligence. And basically, in that 30 days, I drew up the plans for what we wanted to build. It ended up being 7 cabins nestled around the water with a commons area. And then also just started talking to tons of banks and got told no, a lot of rejection, but finally found a local bank that liked the idea and was willing to take a bet on me. And they said, yeah, we'll finance it 80% of the appraised value. So I drew up a pro forma. I didn't even know what a pro forma was. Never really done a real estate deal like this, real estate deal at all. But I kind of had some models for what I thought the occupancy could be, and the ADR based off of just kind of anecdotes from other friends that had short-term rentals, which all told me don't build something because Waco is oversaturated.
Mhm.
But I was like, no, what I want to build is totally different and will kind of create its own lane of traffic and be a destination. And so, yeah, we was able to line up a bank and get some friends and family on board in exchange for, I gave 45% equity, and they were going to give me a short-term loan to be paid back once we refinanced down the road, whatever was needed basically to cover the gap between what the bank gave me and what it cost us. So the bank said, we'll loan you
Mhm.
80%. Their appraisal based off of my pretty rough set of plans and pro forma was $1.8 million. And so their loan was what, like 1.5-ish total.
Mhm.
My initial budget was like 1.6. Well, we ended up spending 2.3 million to build it. And I was just kind of didn't know what I was doing when I built the initial budget, but really as we were designing and I was kind of wearing all the hats, managing the project, help designing all the details as we went, there were just all these decisions, and everybody faces this when you're developing a cool project. It's like, oh, is that really going to cost this much? And there's all these temptations to make these compromises. And yes, you do have to compromise at a certain point, because of course you could spend an unlimited amount of money, but I was not willing to compromise on just scores of decisions and details, because I had this overall sense. It's really hard to articulate. I had this overall sense of what I wanted the feeling and the vibe to be, and I knew it was going to be somehow the culmination of all these tiny little details added up was going to create this. And so thankfully my family members trusted me enough to keep, and they had access to a line of credit through their construction business. So that's where we ended up funneling the additional several $100,000 of cash to cover the difference with the construction loan. But long story short, built the project in 9.5 months from start to finish. That was from like closing on the land to opening our doors. It was a crazy year. I also built a $750,000 spec home 5 minutes down the road at the same time, which took about 4.5 months, and sold that. Was able to roll the profits, which were about $160,000, into the Live Oak Lake project, which was critical. We ended up needing it because we went so far over budget. But it was a crazy year trying to keep the, and not let the ball hit the ground through all of the planning and designing and building, and just flying by the seat of my pants. I mean, I was thinking through, again, I'd never had an Airbnb. I'd never worked in hospitality. I'd never done direct bookings. I'd never done marketing. And I was just sort of like thinking all of these things through to the best of my ability as I went. And yet I didn't even really know anybody who was doing exactly what I had envisioned. So we opened in January of 2022 and had this fantastic launch, and we're getting amazing reviews, tons of bookings coming in just on Airbnb. I knew direct bookings would be a key part of the strategy in the long term, but my strategy initially was exclusively on Airbnb because you get that boost for the first 30 days or so on the platform. Well, like 2 weeks into the hosting journey, one morning I wake up and check my Airbnb account, and the entire thing is suspended, every listing, and I hadn't gotten any warning or communication from Airbnb. It was a pretty bad feeling. I was 25 years old, had over $2 million of other people's money poured into this project, and now literally business is ground to a screeching halt. There's no new bookings coming in, and we had interest payments coming up. I was under the gun, and it was looking back one of the biggest blessings of the entire journey, because it ended up opening up this opportunity for direct booking. So I called several people, and finally somebody told me, you should partner with a travel influencer and see if they'll do a giveaway. So I called this account up in Dallas, Texas, called Dallasites 101. It was like 200,000 followers at the time. And they said, sure, yeah, pay us $950 and we'll do a 2-night stay giveaway. You should do a 2-night stay giveaway. So I was like, okay, great. So literally they didn't even come out. I took photos of the property and gave them to them, which the photos weren't even that great because we had just finished construction, and so the landscapes really hadn't had a chance to grow out. The grass, there wasn't much grass. But it was really cool and very unique for Texas. And so sure enough, they posted, and in a week, I got roughly 5,500 new followers from scratch on Instagram, and I had thrown up a direct booking site so I could capture the attention from social media, and $40,000-ish, right around $40,000 in 1 week of direct bookings, which was absolutely mind-blowing, as you can imagine. So we ended up getting restored on Airbnb a few days later. It had been some glitch in their algorithm that flagged our account because they thought we had too many good reviews coming in, and they thought it was suspicious somehow because we were such a new property. But so then we went all in on this influencer collaboration giveaway strategy, and I was posting content, and right around that time, Instagram as a platform was shifting to Reels being the only way really to get new distribution and expand your reach. And so I was creating some videos and experimenting with it, but really just piggybacking on these influencer giveaways, which we spent about $40,000 on in the first 6 months. We grew about 70,000 followers and 75% of all bookings being direct in that first 6 to 9 months. And then fast forward a year and a half, we had 150,000 followers, 80% plus direct bookings, 95% overall occupancy, tens of millions of views from other creators that had come from YouTube and Instagram and highlighted the property. And one more cool aspect I'll tell, and then I'll shut up. But 4 months after we launched Live Oak Lake, we decided we should try to reappraise and see if we could refinance, pull our money out. So the same real estate appraiser came back out. Now they could actually walk on site on the property, plus they could see 4 months worth of bookings. So it wasn't a full 12 months of history. It was something, and they could see the rate at which we were booking in advance. The new appraisal was $3.1 million, so almost twice what the original one had been. And we found another local bank, 80% of that. We locked in a long-term note. So we pulled out, we paid off all the construction debt, all the temporary loans from all the partners. So there was essentially a zero equity basis for any of us. And then we pulled out like $400,000 on top of that at a great interest rate that we could reinvest into the property, into other projects. So that was really crazy. Then to kind of compound it from like a tax strategy perspective, we did a cost segregation study that first year. And though we made about $540,000 of net income that first year, the cost seg study we did utilizing bonus depreciation allowed us to write off essentially about $1 million, which means we could carry it over to the next year. We had the first 2 years, all the profits there was zero tax on it. Actually more than that, because there was interest after the $540,000 as well. So the first 3 years or so tax-free, and $400,000 tax-free as a loan essentially to reinvest. So I could keep going. I guess I'll stop there. You ask me questions, but then we can talk about the acquisition part later.
Yeah, there's a lot to jump into from that. So thank you for sharing that, because I think for the listeners that may not know the story, I think this sets a perfect stage. But I want to go back even further to something very early that you said and you're one of 9 siblings, or you're one of 10?
One of 10, nine other siblings.
Where are you in that order? Because I'm one of 7. I'm 7 of 7, and I thought that was a lot. And then hearing that, I'm like, okay, like Isaac, you definitely got.
I'm number 5. I'm right in the middle. There's 8 boys and 2 girls.
8 boys and 2 girls. Jeez. How do you think that's impacted you? Because you earlier even said, you've always been a people person. Do you think growing up with that many siblings and having that big of a family helped kind of being that people person, the guy that likes to and enjoys being around people?
Yeah, I think there's, let me just say this. Everything that's good, and I certainly haven't arrived. I've got a lot of things I'm still learning, but everything that's good that I've accomplished or that I am today, I 100% credit to my parents and the church that we're a part of and the environment that they fostered for me to grow up with. It was, yes, no one's perfect, but they were about as close to perfect as parents can get. And my grandparents also were very formative in our lives. And so I was homeschooled. I grew up in this agrarian-based Christian community. We really did life together. We played together. We worshiped together. We worked together. And we had character was the number one prize, I guess, for my parents instilling in us. They put our character above any kind of gifts or talents they thought we had. And by getting that priority right, it allowed those gifts, I think, to really come out and have a chance to flourish. But some of the lessons that it taught me, I loved people. We were constantly hosting other people. We were constantly interacting with other people. But one of the things that my parents cared a lot about, and this has obviously become much more relevant since I was a child, and so it's something that I think a lot about as a parent myself now, but we didn't have a TV. We didn't have cell phones. My parents had cell phones eventually, but we never had really screens in our home. And so there was not a lot of distraction, virtual distraction, and there was a lot of real-time opportunity to interact with one another. And I think that in addition to being able to work in family businesses and kind of have all these opportunities that the community afforded to work for other people, just allowed me this incredible opportunity that a lot of young people don't have and think they need to go to college to get these skills. And of course, there's plenty of valuable skills I'm sure that are attained pretty much exclusively in a college setting. If you're wanting to be a
Hmm.
doctor or an engineer or an attorney, though even some of
Yeah.
that is changing. But there was a very relational approach, I guess I would say, to our child rearing, and also just helping us to sort of find our way, figure out what we wanted to do. And, but yeah, also being in a big family environment was great because we weren't spoiled, and
Hmm.
we learned to share, and we learned to cooperate and collaborate with one another in a way that just wouldn't have been possible. And though I don't think it's for everyone to have a family of that size, my parents,
Yeah.
they had a lot of guts, but um, I consider it a huge privilege to have had that experience, and am truly grateful that they sacrificed selflessly to enable us to have the kind of childhood that we had. And now it's pretty awesome to see them sort of starting to be rewarded in a lot of ways for all of that hard work. I mean, we have a very vibrant family, a ton of grandkids. We have the most amazing family times and holidays when we all get together. And in some ways, we're just sort of getting started
Hmm.
generationally, because, yeah, I just got married a few years ago, and there's still, several of my siblings that aren't. So, um, yeah, hopefully that answers the question. It's a little bit
Yeah.
bigger of a topic than uh, that we could talk on, and I haven't spent a ton of time sharing actually on other podcasts, but it's been such a formative part of who I am today, that childhood and growing up with a big family.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I recently, after you and I chatted, I got exposed to your newsletter, and I got your recent one, and I found that very touching. And for listeners, go to isaacfrench.com and you can sign up and see there. But your grandma, I want to talk about your grandma really quick because she seems to have instilled a lot of the artistic and design kind of creativity into you, growing up, being able to do paintings together and being outside and doing the artistic stuff. And the thing I find really interesting about your story, especially to maybe even set some more context, Zach Boozy Cruz, and for our listeners, they know him too from being on the network. But we're working on a project around Airbnb, and the big picture of Airbnb, right? Outside of the platform itself, which I know you've had some interesting relations with them accidentally banning your account. But Brian Chesky and Joe are much natural designers at heart. They're creatives, right? And so the platform itself from Airbnb showcases that. It's beautifully designed. The functionality, the features, the roadmap that they've gone through. I can see that a lot in you. So tell me about how your grandma and your family and the artistic nature of kind of what you are as an artist really carried through into Live Oak Lake, and how you approach hospitality. Because I also know you say, like, if we're gonna do something, we're gonna do it right all the way through, like not cutting the corners and not, dropping this one thing, like these little details that got to where, Live Oak Lake was with before the exit. Those were super important, right? Like those little details as an artist, I'm sure were more important than the bigger picture, because that's what makes the bigger picture. So I would love to know just kind of how your mindset works around all of that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a friend. Do you know Hans Lorai by chance? You
The
should
name
totally
sounds really
follow him
familiar.
on Instagram if you don't.
Yeah.
He's kind of exploded there recently, but he's super gifted at explaining design. He kind of, especially interior design, breaks it down. But he had a good way of saying, of putting this, the importance of design in a property. He said design, he thinks, is the most important amenity. And so I, again, coming from an outsider's perspective on hospitality, didn't have kind of the boxes that may have hindered me in terms of how to do things or what the status quo was. And that ended up being a huge benefit. And so let me just say, I am, to a fault, detail oriented and a perfectionist. It's really something I've struggled with, actually, even in my art. So, like, I do, yeah, pencil drawing. My grandma Jan gave us lessons since I was, yeah, 4 years old, and have done watercolors and oil painting. Something I've struggled with, and I've started to overcome it a lot in recent years, but is being so detail oriented that you're like replicating, you're almost photographic in what you're doing, which is cool. And I used to think the more photographic you can be, the better. But there's also such a art is subjective, but there is such a universal beauty to being able to capture, more importantly, a feeling and a sensation. And a lot of times, the more detail you give does not necessarily contribute to that. It can even diminish that. I think it's more about finding, again, like even being more impressionistic and finding what is the right balance of color and light and detail and emphasis and proportionality. So there's a lot of lessons from art that I have been able to apply in laying out the units. I mentioned that feeling of walking onto the property and sort of seeing this blank canvas, I guess you could say, of what we were working with, the trees, this little pond. But I remember that feeling of like starting to envision, oh, this could be a cabin right here that I'm sort of framing with this front view, and I'm going to walk out and have this little pathway that winds its way down to the water, just like this, between these two trees right here. And it was a lot of fun because there were actually a lot of givens on the land with the trees, with the topography that we had. And so it was less about like painting in a two-dimensional sense where it's just a blank canvas that you're adding to. And it was more about, I don't know, sculpturing maybe, like in wood, where it's 3D for one, but you're also kind of working around the knots and the grain, or like a marble sculpture where you're actually chipping away pieces to sort of find that form and perfect figure of whatever you're creating that's already kind of inherently in the material that you're working with. So that's kind of what it felt like, speaking of working with the land. And then, and from a landscape perspective, from a design perspective, I wanted to create something that was minimalist, that really achieved the goal of bringing the outdoors inside. So we used a lot of glass and didn't distract from the landscape, but rather highlighted the beauty that we did have, which was a hidden gem. We had to do a lot of work to the land itself, clearing the trees, clearing the pond, just like fine-tuning all of the horticulture and landscape that we had. But I would say in general, all the way down to, or all the way down, all the way up, however you look at it, the brand, the website, the social media kind of curation, content curation, I'm very detail-oriented, and I'm fairly confident and decisive when it comes to understanding. That's what makes it hard to articulate, because it's kind of intuitive what works and what doesn't work. But basically, everything has to work together. That's the concept of brand, right? Like, a brand is not a logo or a name. A brand is an overall identity that translates into every detail in the physical manifestation of the property, the digital manifestation, every aspect, the framework, the copywriting around it, the mental image that people form when they hear your brand, when they encounter your property. So there's all these countless touch points in a physical sense and in a digital sense where guests are going to encounter you, or potential guests. And it's about understanding what ties all of it together. I think it's easy to overcomplicate it, but being able to start with sort of like a palette of, okay, for the Live Oak Lake case, we have big Texas live oak trees that are just magnificent, hundreds of years old. We have water and kind of a Pacific Northwest vibe, which I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a time when I was younger, and that heavily influenced kind of my personal preference for water and then Nordic-inspired architecture. So we've got this Nordic-inspired architecture. What is that? That's these really sleek black units with a lot of glass, a lot of clean lines. And then we have, a lot of like white oak, really kind of refined interior finishes. So let's just cap it at that. That's 4 or 5 main themes on the palette that we're now going to work with. Yes, there's a million other little details that we're going to have to make decisions on, but having that general framework, and I kind of butchered it in describing it to you because it was off the cuff, but was so important, being able to translate that down to every single decision, including the brand and the logo and the signage and the front gate and the landscape details and the commons area and the container pool, and just all these, again, these little views, vignettes, guest touch points with the property. So design is, it's the greatest amenity. It's the most powerful lever that you can pull when creating an experience, in creating a place that people are not just coming to stay, but they're coming to experience. And it's extremely powerful. I think Brian Chesky and Airbnb are a great model. And overall, I want to be careful that I don't just throw shade. Yes, it was frustrating being suspended, but I have an immense amount of respect for what they've built, and they still serve even an important place in my model of operating, even if it's a minority and kind of a back seat. But as a platform, I think they've done a terrific job. That's a great example, because if you look at like VRBO or Booking.com, which are kind of the only two US competitors, which are much, much more insignificant, obviously, from a volume perspective, I haven't found a single person who has told me that they prefer booking through one of those platforms. It's clunkier, it's less intuitive, it's more complicated, and Airbnb figured that out really well.
Yeah.
So design is extremely important.
All right, Slick Talkers. Sorry to interrupt. Halfway through the episode, you're making it through. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Hostfully has been a partner and sponsor of this podcast since the very, very early days of 2020. That's going on almost over 4 years. We're so thankful for their partnership. We use them for our vacation homes. Obviously, it's so important to have a hub. Everything that you need to know about your property, from reservations and calendar management to then, of course, how do you manage your connections with your other suppliers like Minute or Wheelhouse or whatever technology you use behind the scenes. Hostfully has the hub for you in order to make sure that you're managing your properties with ease and, of course, within one platform. Not only do they have great connectivity partnerships with other vendors in the industry, they have great distribution partnerships. So channels like Airbnb, Booking.com, Vrbo, you name it, they're connected. Homes and Villas by Marriott, pretty cool channel. You can't go wrong with their connection and distribution hub, but also, let's be honest, we're always on the go, and having the Hostfully mobile app to manage our vacation homes and any kind of emergency communications or extra pieces that we need to know is super crucial. So grab the link in the show notes, make sure that you connect with Hostfully today, and they'll take great care of you. Will from Slick Talk had sent you. Let them know you're going to get a special offer as well in the link in the show notes. Now, like always, we're back to the episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you to Hostfully for sponsoring this episode and for the podcast in general. We love your partnership. Thank you guys so much. And now back to the episode. No, I love it. I love it. And I even wrote in my notes, I want to call you the Brian Chesky of like landscape or micro hotel resorts, because of not building a platform, but you've built a place. And something that's been really special for me throughout my journey throughout this podcast and getting to interact with a bunch of people throughout the industry is that I think when you are wired a certain way, like you are with attention to detail, which I always like think of Sam Shank when we had him on the show, founder of Hotel Tonight, acquired by Airbnb, Airbnb acquired them. He said, suffering in the details. That was kind of like their mission with his team. It's like, we want to suffer in the details because that's what's going to get us to this end goal. And if we skip on these details, it's going to be what causes actually probably our demise. And so I think, you're the Brian Chesky of building place, not platform. And I see you now are building your own platform, so we can talk about that as well. But in the sense of, I just think that you said it so good, and I wanted to ask a question with Live Oak Lake specifically, and the way that you showcase your design, and like you said, sometimes to a fault, maybe like the detail is so important to you. But how much of yourself did you feel like was embedded in Live Oak Lake? So that way, when guests were staying at Live Oak Lake, it wasn't like they were staying at this place that you financed and built and did all this hard work for it. Did it feel like they were staying with a piece of you, like a piece of Isaac? They get to experience you through a different way, more creative than actually interacting with you personally?
I would like to believe yes. This is an important point because we talk a lot about storytelling and the importance of giving an immersive experience to your guests. And so the way we were able to do this, the hard part about this is, how do you scale this? But people could even have said, well, how do you scale that from 1 unit to 7 units? And the way I thought about it was, okay, so yes, I don't think you should be in hospitality if you're not first and foremost a people person that just loves to interact and connect with other people. And like I wrote in the newsletter, serve other people. Like, that's the heart of hospitality. It's more blessed to give than to receive. There's a great feeling and kind of a self-fulfilling reward in giving, counterintuitively. So that's the basis. But the way I thought about how to scale that and how to make sure that the personality and the soul and the character of the property was true to me and felt authentic. It didn't just feel like, okay, this is just an investor who stamped their name on this or whatever, to sort of replicate that, because that's a good idea. But literally, the same approach of suffering through the details. I like that a lot, or however he said that I took to the rest of the property. I employed that with the guest book, which I mean, I spent probably 20 hours creating and put a bit of our story in there. I went through, I wanted it to be something that guests would enjoy, like a coffee table book. They would love to read, even the technical, boring stuff, like how to use the really fancy appliances that we had. So I went through and collected all of this boring information and kind of rewrote it and formatted it in such a way that was fun and my voice and therefore part of our story and our recommendations of things that guests could do, the guest book itself. So I spent a ton of time on that. I spent a ton of time figuring out the right way to communicate with the guests pre-arrival. So all of which was almost all automated, but I thought a lot about how can I write this in such a way that is authentic to me and doesn't overly formalize this or make it feel like a transaction. I think that's an important framework of looking at how can we eliminate the transaction feeling from this and establish and reinforce the relationship aspect. And then the welcome gift, I realized guests love to see their name handwritten. So I'm going to figure out the right card that I can handwrite their name on and write them a short note. And then eventually I was able to train my staff to do that. And so it was kind of a system that I was able to scale myself in that sense. And then, we used fresh cookies from a local bakery, which is a friend of mine that owns and operates. And we plated and served those to the guests upon arrival. It was already done by the cleaners, but little things like that really actually don't even cost that much to employ, but can make such a huge difference in showing guests that you care, which is, again, part of the essence of what hospitality even is. So our website, the welcome book, the messaging, all of it is coming from me and my voice and our voice. My wife was included in that as well, though it was kind of my my main focus. But and then in addition to that, I also spent, especially initially, quite a bit of time on site just interacting with guests. So we had this commons area with a fire pit and lounge chairs, and it was just so beautiful to see strangers come up to each other and get to know each other, and I'd get to know them, and I still have friends that I originally met in those kind of interactions, and that is the beauty, that's the magic of authentic experiential hospitality. I think that people talk a lot about being, this new staff light model, and I feel very passionate about it as well. But if you're just cutting away staff to save money, or because you think that categorically guests don't want some of these aspects, a front desk, a concierge, daily housekeeping, that may be true, but you can't lose the soul and the personality, especially as the host, of their experience. So you got to find, again, you got to kind of reverse engineer it, but find those touch points that do matter. And maybe some of it isn't in person. Maybe some of it's just a letter that you're writing, or like I said, the messaging. But there's a way to do that that communicates so much more. It's so much about, I guess, quality versus the quantity of interaction, the quality that they feel like this is you and that you care about them. And so that's kind of how I think about it. But that's an important point, because at the end of the day, what I'm calling experiential hospitality, that could become such a catchphrase and just more jargon. But I do believe that the human connection is central to that, and storytelling and imparting your authentic self and character into the property on every level makes a huge difference.
I couldn't agree more. And, something like you said, you just said it, it can become more jargon than not sometimes, with a lot of people trying to, I think it's interesting. We've seen the industry come in such a wave, where I think in 2018, 17, pre-COVID times, everyone was about hospitality. Economy was okay. We were, people were traveling. We had pretty decent numbers. Everyone was making money. And then COVID happens and, all this other stuff. And, we've gone through some ebbs and flows, but I think experiential hospitality became a buzzword prior to even me knowing who you were, from tech vendors who are trying to empower their operators to become more experiential and to do something new and have something to talk about during COVID. But what I see with you is yes, it's experiential hospitality because you're creating a feeling, not just a logo or a website. You're creating something that they can remember, which is again the core of our business. But it's more intentional hospitality. Every detail is intentional. Every interaction is intentional, and that's what creates it experiential. So like I think it's super well like put in the way that you built the arc within Live Oak Lake, within how you approach hospitality and design and details and all these other little things that I can clearly see you get passionate about. So for the listeners, I think it's, the intentionality behind how you execute in creating your own destination, whether it's in a home that's in a suburb or, 7 cabins out in the woods in Waco, Texas. Like, I think the intentionality and how you create it and the way you go about it, the thoughtfulness behind it is super important. So that's my TED talk, but I want to talk to you a little bit about in the sense of, I think there's a lot of things in the landscape resort micro hotel kind of conversation that could be missing. I'm not from the world that you're in the sense of creating my own destination and obviously like I said, we do that with our homes as much as we can in different markets that we are for our management company, but you're in it. You're in it. You know the people like Ben Wolf, the others that are creating their own destinations. What do you think is missing in the landscape hotel, micro hotel resort? What do you think is missing in that conversation when you hear other podcasts, when you hear other people speaking on stage? Do you think there's a part of this sector of hospitality that isn't shined or maybe brought to light as often as you'd think it should be?
That's an interesting question. Let me say this. I think that there is still a verdict that is yet to be given on the best way to scale this, and I think that there's been a lot of unsuccessful attempts, and so I don't want to assume that I have it together just because I've done one property. I think that's a great concept. I look at people like Ben. I look up to people like Ben as a great leader in the space and somebody who's executing at an even higher level than I am. But even what he's doing, though I think it's awesome and I take a ton of inspiration, I'm still sort of waiting to see how, he's doing a project now that's 45 keys. He's raising money for it. He's finishing building a project that's, I think it's around 20 keys. He's expanding the current project that they have, Onera Fredericksburg, to like 25 or 30 keys. And I've thought a lot about it too, just because now that we've sold Live Oak Lake, which we can talk about if you want, but I've thought about what's the next thing for me. And I've thought a lot about what is the core concept that works here. I think that if you have 10 keys or less, and so I want to just talk about key count for a minute. Maybe that will be my answer to your question, because I think there's a lot to be determined here. But if you have 10 keys or less, you can create pretty much any concept that's unique anywhere you want, and you're never going to have to worry about occupancy or oversaturation. Live Oak Lake is a good example of this. I mean, we could not keep up with the demand. Now, of course, you have to, that assumes you can actually execute a unique property. But when you go up to 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 keys, you start to cross a threshold somewhere in there where you're moving more into like the traditional hotel and resort category. And first of all, the risks are a lot bigger because you're spending a lot more money per key than those traditional developments probably are. But I also start to worry a little bit about, I mean, does that mean you have to include a restaurant? Does that mean you need to include a bar, a wellness? There's a lot of other amenities that would be nice to have but aren't necessary at a Live Oak Lake scale property, because the experience is the uniqueness, the intimacy, the attention to detail that's possible on a property that size. So this is something I think a lot about, and I like to have.
Can I interrupt you and ask you a kind of like a secondary question there?
Yep.
In the sense of, talking about, your exit, you did get to sell Live Oak Lake at about $1 million a key, I think on the dot you said. And so, that's a significant exit, especially in our industry. I don't think that is a normal kind of financial outcome when it comes to this type of venture, right? And so when you're talking about scale, I want to ask you the question, does scale truly matter when it's so highly curated and unique that way that it can generate revenue or an exit outcome as if you were a bigger property?
Yes, for sure. I think that there is, well, let me put it like this. The valuation in that case is based on the cap rate which is coming from the occupancy and ultimately the RevPAR, the ADR and the occupancy combined. So the question becomes, are you oversaturating? Can you maintain certain RevPAR numbers by increasing key count there, and therefore will that translate to a much higher valuation based off of the same cap rate? That I'm still a little bit unsure about. I think it depends on market, the product that you're offering. I think the social media and audience component is also a big part of the valuation. And when we sold Live Oak Lake, that included the social media following. That was kind of the brand, that was everything. And so that commanded a bit of a premium as part of that, versus just selling the real estate. But in the traditional hotel world, you have a flag, you have a franchise, and then you have an operating company that could be a management company that could be entirely different, even from the flag, and then you have the real estate. So you have all these different kind of components, and the real estate trades at a different cap rate, and it's more of a commodity. What I am passionate about, again, the brand is so important, and that identity and the audience that you build around it that gives you the pricing power, that it's kind of inextricable from the real estate. It's not the kind of thing what I want to build where, okay, yeah, this could be even a Four Seasons, or this could be an Aman. And maybe those aren't good examples because those are extremely high demand and careful, very well curated portfolios and brands that probably wouldn't want that property anyways. And a different model, that much higher staff to guest ratio and just kind of ultra luxury. But or let's just say, whatever it would be, a Hilton or a Marriott to use more of a commodity kind of big name stay. But the properties that I want to create, regardless of key count, wouldn't be candidates for that model. So building a brand around them and building an audience is super important, and I think it can be done. To me right now, the way I think about it is like, I stayed at Amangiri, which is 38 keys, and it's like obviously maybe one of the top resorts in the world. It was $6,800 for one night, which is just insane.
Jeez.
But it was literally a once in a lifetime, mind blowing experience, and they average 95% occupancy year round at those kind of rates. It's insane. It's the highest RevPAR hotel in America, but they just expanded and built like a whole glamping section a couple years ago during COVID, which is done super well as well. And so they're, obviously I think they could probably continue. Now they're doing residences. They could continue expanding and probably not hurt that valuation or the occupancy or any of those metrics at all, just because of the brand that they have built for it. But I've been to other properties, even like a Four Seasons in Santa Fe, Rancho Encantado, that was, I think, 65 keys. It's a landscape hotel, separate pod units in the landscape. And it's one of their smallest, if not their smallest property in the entire portfolio. But it still felt a little bit like, it felt like you were sacrificing the intimacy and the personality and just the boutiqueness, I guess, of even an Amangiri, which is on one end of the spectrum when it comes to luxury. And I'm not trying to build that. So I feel like 30 to 40 keys really is an important threshold that I would never want to cross. Ben is pushing that with some of his projects, and I think he's got really, really innovative concepts. So I'm not saying it's not going to work at all. He's, again, I look up to him. He's like pushing the envelope further than I have in all of the things that he's doing. But it's something I think about a lot. And as I'm considering the next project, is weighing heavily on what the concept is. How many keys? Is it going to have some kind of an F&B component? Is it in proximity to other restaurants that would help mitigate the need for that? So yeah, that's a kind of a hot topic that I think about a lot.
Yeah, well, let's segue into that transition there. Tell us about, what is next. Now that you've exited Live Oak Lake, you have this, I don't know, like, it's so interesting, your story, because you came in with Live Oak Lake not really having the background to fully do it. You just were like, this is what I see in my head. I'm creative, I'm detail oriented, and I'm going to do it. And obviously you had family and people come alongside you and support this mission, but now you've done it. Like, before you didn't do it. You had the idea and now you did it. What's next? And like, what are you thinking of? Like, what's keeping you up at night with the next project potentially? Like, I want to know kind of where your head's at, especially if it comes into door count and, not saturating that experience, but creating enough scale within that it does provide a next level type of situation for you.
Yeah, I have looked at several deals here in Texas. I'm very bullish on the Texas market. I've struggled all along in sort of telling the story and peeling back the curtain and like, should I show all my cards? But I've learned that
Yeah.
the more transparent you are, the more people trust you, and this isn't a zero-sum game. So, but yeah, I'll just to make it very personal to what I want to build next. I want to build something here in Central Texas. I think it's an incredible market. Again, just being in the Texas Triangle, right in the middle, with 22 million people within a 2-hour drive ish. I feel like Texas, again, still has a huge lack and hunger for truly unique, distinctive experiences and architecture that is just world class. And so that gives me an opportunity. I want to integrate some kind of more of an agrarian component with. This was a big part of my life growing up on a farm, on a family homestead, raising animals, having a family garden. And I think there's levels to which this could be built out. There's a place I like to give as an example called Babylon Storen in the Western Cape of South Africa that is just the ultimate. It's insane what they've done in terms of beauty and functionality combined, of this amazing kind of farm hospitality experience. But I want to incorporate at least herb gardens and salad gardens, and that potentially could become part of the experience. That, yeah, maybe we don't have a restaurant, but we have, because at this point I'm kind of shying away from the idea of doing a restaurant just because I've never been in that part of hospitality, and it kind of scares me, just all of the moving parts that are there's enough on my plate already trying to deliver an exceptional lodging experience. But yeah, maybe there's a way to incorporate fresh greens and herbs into a meal kit that the guest could prepare themselves in their own kitchen, or that you could bring a private chef in to partner with to prepare it for your guests. But I want to incorporate kind of that agrarian feeling into the property, but also have a juxtaposition between, really well tended and cared for gardens and kind of the rugged natural beauty of the landscape. So this is the first time to break this publicly, but I've actually identified a piece of property that do not have under contract yet, so it could fall out, but I'll just describe it because it's pretty cool. It's the same experience of going onto the property and feeling just this overwhelming sense of, this is incredible. Like something needs to be done to honor this piece of property that transcends what everybody else is doing. So I'm looking at a concept right now that would be 20 to 25 units probably, and this property has this incredible White Rock Creek that runs through the middle of it that has water in it pretty much year round, but it also has these amazing, just magnificent live oak trees sprinkled throughout, and these little gentle rolling hills. And my wife and I went out there a couple months ago because I first identified it just looking on Google Earth, and then ended up realizing when I started looking at the county GIS map, I knew the owner because he was the electrical inspector on a project that I had done. And so I called him up. I was like, hey, would you ever be interested in selling land? And he was like, yeah, I mean, not really, but I do have a pretty cool piece of property. So he invited me to come out and look at it. And that led to us talking, and we'll see. Something may work out there. But we went out there a couple months ago because I wanted to show it to her. And Texas, I don't know if you've been in Texas during the wildflower season, but it is truly spectacular if it's a good year. And this place was just insane. I mean, I've never seen bluebonnets like they were blanketing the ground at this place. It was absolutely beautiful, and just a blanket of blue rolling hills with these magnificent live oak trees, and then this ribbon creek that flows through the middle. So I'm having a lot of fun actually right now at this moment, creating some concepts, talking with architects, sort of ideating what could this place be. And that's my approach with any project that I take on. I've had a lot of opportunities I've looked at that other people have offered, but at the end of the day, I want to feel a connection to it. I want to feel passionate about it, that, okay, this is the spot that, yes, it does have certain due diligence measures in place. I've gone through certain due diligence measures to accurately assess that there's enough demand. Building and operating it is not going to be a problem, insurmountable problem. But at the end of the day, I want to feel this incredible connection emotionally even to the place. And that's what made selling Live Oak Lake so difficult, because I already had that. It was like my baby. And yet when you get an offer for $1 million a key and it's your first deal, and to be able to just show the full life cycle, I couldn't turn it down, which was a pretty amazing experience in and of itself. But yeah, this place I'm looking at now is pretty cool. And if, again, I've learned, and I learned this actually selling Live Oak Lake, if it's meant to be, it'll be. And I don't want to force something that is just too much of a stretch. And so I'm letting the pieces sort of come together organically. And I'm looking forward to, potentially having an incredible project that would be the perfect opportunity to sort of, like you said, step up. The stakes would certainly be a lot higher. Again, this is 2 or 3 times the size, but I would also be spending significantly more per key because of the location and the remoteness of it, and also what I want to do, and bringing in other consultants and architects and such, which I didn't have on the first project, and I see the value of. So yeah, that's a little sneak peek into what's next in my world.
I love it. And I have a couple more questions that I wasn't really thinking I was going to ask, but I'm curious in the sense of, with the exit of Live Oak Lake and this new concept, you've mentioned that there's live oak trees on this new piece of land. Are you going to keep the same name? Are you going to have Live Oak brand, or is the brand just completely off on that new ownership?
No, the brand is entirely gone. In fact, I think they've even talked about expanding to several more properties under the same name. So we'll see. They may even expand that. But no, this does have that commonality, and it's literally not very far down the road. And the live oak trees they're prolific in all of Texas. So it's not that unique to the property. It's the combination of the water, the size of the trees, the spacing of the trees, the topography, the rolling hills. But yeah, no, it'll be something entirely distinct from that.
Okay. It's just curious, I was like, all right, maybe he's dropping hints on the episode. My next question is, have you listened or heard the Diary of a CEO podcast?
I have heard of it, I believe, but I never listened to it.
Okay, so basically at the end of every episode that he has a guest on, at the end they have this journal, a diary, and they get to ask a question to the next guest. And eventually he's filled up enough diaries to create these question cards, and I bought the question card pack, so you can read the question from somebody famous, and then you can scan the QR code to see the actual episode. Really cool, creative product for a podcast. And I was going through the pack today, and I was like, okay, I want to pull a couple questions for Isaac, and just not from my own words and my own thinking, but just something from a person around the world. And so I got 2 of them that I thought would be really interesting for you. And the first one I wanted to ask Isaac is, what is something that people value that you no longer value?
Wow, that's such a good question. Oh, let's see here. I think, does this have to apply to hospitality or just bigger?
Anything.
Anything.
Open. Yeah.
Man, I would say it's such a great way of thinking about it, because it's reverse from what I typically would think of that question as. I would say people value, and I don't want to come across the wrong way when I say this, because I'm a very, very small fish actually, but I have built an audience in this space now, and that's been extremely powerful and a great networking opportunity, again, to kind of fulfill what I really am passionate about, which is connecting with other people. But people, I think I valued, and I think other people definitely value, this notion of recognition that, and again, I'm such a tiny example of this. I can only imagine what this actually looks like in real fame. But I think I kind of was mesmerized by that idea when I was younger, and with a tiny bit of recognition in my space, I think that's a double-edged sword, and I don't value that as much as I value the connections that it's facilitated. But in terms of quote unquote being famous, which I'm not famous, again, so don't quote me as saying that, but sort of in this micro setting, I have a different take than I certainly did when I was younger, and I think than a lot of people think of. That's a really great question, though.
Oh, that's a great answer. I I get that at the scale like that we're all at, right? Like this is hospitality is such a big but small industry, so we see it every day, and I feel that answer. That's a good answer. The second question, Isaac, is going to probably piggyback well off of your answer, but is what is the most frequent piece of advice that people ask you for, and what is your answer?
The most frequent piece of advice they ask for is, how do I start? There's a lot of people that see Live Oak Lake, that see me and my journey that I've shared publicly, and are like, oh, I just want to do that. And I'm really like blown away that I can be an example to especially other young people that are just starting out, because I'm still pretty young. I have so much going for me that it makes me hard to feel like I can fully empathize with everyone, just in the sense that I had this incredible family. I had,
Mm,
the most amazing, at the end of the day, that's by far the most valuable part, the most amazing childhood and the experience, even the work experience that I was able to get in construction and running projects at such a young age. And that really set the course for this journey in hospitality that I'm on now. But I still feel like everyone can achieve some kind of similar path when it comes to, let's just say, specifically creating a micro resort or an experiential
mhm.
hospitality property. It really comes down to, how badly do you want it, and are you willing to knock until the door is opened? And so a lot of people ask, well, I don't have any money. That's obviously like the biggest question. How do I get started? I don't even know any rich people. And I would have argued, I don't really know any rich people too. I think that's a relative term. Um, but you'd be surprised. I think, again, like a lot of people have told me, I think it's hard to sort of like reflect on yourself, and I hate talking about myself, but a lot of people have told me over again how passionate they can sense that I am about what I'm doing. And
Mhm.
okay, so maybe that's partly just my genetic makeup and whatever, but I know, like, again, like when I described this dream of creating a property like Live Oak Lake, and the desire to pull together all of these fragments of work and life experience and passions that I had and dump them into one passion project, that ignited something in me. And this whole journey since then that has unfolded, that is, in terms of like a work endeavor, and it's hard to even call it work sometimes because I love it so much, it doesn't feel like work, but that is so rewarding and so fulfilling, to find something that you actually love and that you feel like, okay, maybe I'm actually good at this to some degree. I don't feel like I'm good at it. I feel like I love doing it, and I love learning, and I love connecting with other people that are better than me. And so by
Mm,
nature, that's just going to make me good at it, even if I'm not. I think that applies to almost anything. But if you really are passionate, if you see a project like Live Oak Lake and you say, I want to do that, then that probably is a really good indicator that you do have what it takes, actually. And you just need to actually put in the reps and start pounding the pavement and start knocking on doors and start reaching out to the people that you do know and building trust, building relationships. And when it comes to the roadmap, I've done a lot of coaching with other people that are at various points along the journey. I actually created a whole course around it because I was getting so many questions and taking so many calls. So I've actually
yeah.
put a lot of time and effort into thinking out what is a strategic, logical sequence of events to create a property like this. And it's such a multidisciplinary undertaking, because you've got design and concept and building and operating and systems and automations and marketing and social media and just all of these different aspects that overlap. That's what makes it so fun for me. But so if people want to check that out, to shamelessly plug, they can go to
Yeah.
experientialhospitality.com and see that course. But what I would say is, you need to actually have a vision that is unique, that's distinctive, and that you believe in absolutely 110%. And then go around and start telling people about this. And when it comes to actually finding the land and getting it under contract, that's the easy part. Then you need to come up with the money. I think most people are just too scared of being told no, whether that's from a bank or from
Mm,
investors. And you just have to get used to no, and don't take it
mhm.
personally. And again, be steadfast in your conviction of what your vision and your idea and what your dream really is. And luck is going to favor the person who's willing to do that. And um, I think it goes beyond luck too, but I really do believe that the universe helps, and I would say ultimately God will, who puts gifts inside of each one of us. And when we find those passions and we find those dreams, He wants us to realize those things. And so by aligning ourselves with whatever that greater purpose is that we're sort of discovering for our own lives, and then giving ourselves, even in a mundane or, whatever practical utilitarian sense of terms of a job or an occupation, he's going to bless that. I think that you're going to find fulfillment, and you're going to find a path. It may be a circuitous route. It may be take a lot of twists and turns you didn't envision, but you're going to find people who believe in you and are going to take a risk on you. I really believe, and I say that in faith, because people did that for me. And at the end of the day, I'm not somebody special. Yeah, I may have a certain set of gifts just like everybody else does, but if you have that vision, maybe you need to partner with other people, maybe you need to collaborate, but believe in it, believe in what your vision is, be passionate about it, and that will be a magnet that will bring people to you.
Man, very well said. I couldn't have said it better myself, and ended on a better note, in the sense of, it's so funny because there's all these cheesy quotes, right? Like it's like, oh, everyone's like, oh, you're so lucky, right? As a founder, and you've had success in entrepreneurship, and it's all working out really great for you. And it's like, yes, the harder I work, the luckier I feel, right? Like there's obviously a hard work piece into it. You have to put in the reps, like you said. And, it's so funny that you mentioned, like, God wants us to do this, right? Like, I'm a man of faith as well. And I have rarely, actually, I don't think I've ever said that out loud on the podcast. So, like, just very candid. But like, it's so funny how you have this idea in your head of how it's all going to work and how it's going to go and how this answered prayer is going to look like this, right? But in reality, it's such a different path. And I think the way you said it is like, you just have to be open to the way it's going to go and put yourself in that situation, get yourself in front of people, and just make it happen, in the sense of, if it's meant to be, it will. If it's not, it won't. And then other things will open up. So I think it's very well said the way you said it. It was you got me pumped up for the day, Isaac. You got me pumped up for the day. Let's say that. You got me.
It's been a lot of fun. I
really good.
love talking with other people that get it and that also feel passionate about it.
I love it. Well, I've asked you my questions. I've gotten to hear your story. The listeners got to hear your story. We hopefully got to, well, you shared some information that's new and exciting about the next journey and the project. Obviously, everything's going to be linked in the show notes. So your masterclass to your social medias, etc. But if any of the listeners are like, I just need to talk to Isaac, I need to get, what's the one place you want to send them if they're just needing to talk to you more, or even discover more about you and kind of what you've done and what you're building now?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter or X at Isaac French _, but I actually just built a website. It is isaacjfrench.com. It's got a little portfolio, a little bit about me, and it has my email on there. It's i@isaacjfrench.com. Feel free to shoot me an email, and I read and respond to everyone. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
I love it. Isaac, thank you so much. Seriously, I love this whole conversation. I love what you're doing in the space. I think it's refreshing. I think it's exciting. There's a lot of people that have been in the industry for 30, 40, 25, whatever amount of years. And they look at this generation of you, me, Ben Wolfs, whatever, as the easy generation, trying to make this easy. Hospitality is easy, right? And reality, and we all know it's not. And so thank you for building in public and sharing your story about the hard up and down, the excitement, the passion, all the above. I think it's super refreshing. And I think my audience specifically knows that this whole podcast and this conversation isn't to show that this is easy, that it shows that the harder you work and the more passionate you are about relationships and the actual like soul of hospitality, the more likely you're going to have success in this business, because that's what it all is all about. So I want to say thank you for that and being a great example for the listeners and for all the viewers.
Well, thanks again, Will, for having me. It's been a lot of fun to chat, and you're a great, incredible interviewer. So thanks for using your gifts to facilitate conversations like this.
Of course. Thank you. And for all the slick talkers, you know exactly what to do. You're going to like, subscribe, all things isaacjfrench.com. Show them all the support that we can. Obviously, this hopefully will not be the last episode we have you on, Isaac. As your journey continues, would love to always have you back. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast.
So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.